Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. For those that are new to my YouTube channel, subscribe immediately to see more content, and also leave a comment down below to suggest more amazing kinds of videos. Bring in part 7 of What If Spider-Man MCU entered Damnchi. Link down in description of the fan fiction This What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 13. Interlude, Loki Familia Meeting. Interlude, Loki Familia Meeting. In his office at the Twilight Manor, Finn Damnchi sat at the head of the table, his childlike appearance belying the authority he commanded as the captain of the Loki Familia. Around him, the top executives of the Familia gathered, their expressions serious as Finn addressed them. Goddess Loki, esteemed executives, Finn began, his voice carrying a weight that belied his youthful appearance. As you are all aware, our recent expedition into the dungeon has resulted in significant losses for our Familia. Goddess Loki, seated at the opposite end of the table, listened intently, her expression unreadable as she regarded Finn with a mixture of curiosity and concern. I'll provide a brief overview of the new species of monsters we encountered, primarily for the benefit of our esteemed goddess, Finn announced, directing his attention to Loki. As he spoke, his words were punctuated by nods of acknowledgement from the gathered executives. These caterpillar monsters were unlike anything we've encountered before, he continued, his tone measured yet firm. They spewed acid and possessed purple blood that was equally corrosive. Our weapons melted upon contact with their blood or acid, except for Ice's sword, which is enchanted with Durandal properties. Additionally, their monster cores are unlike anything we have ever seen. With a solemn air, Finn held up the single magic core they had managed to collect. Tion bravely retrieved this core, plunging her hand directly into the monster's chest, disregarding the acid pouring over her body. He explained, admiration evident in his voice. Unfortunately, all the other monsters dissolved or exploded, leaving no core behind. Tion sat up straighter at Finn's praise and whispered to her sister, "See, Finn totally loves me." The other executives simply rolled their eyes as Finn pretended not to hear her, an act impossible with his heightened level 6 senses. "Wait, what's with that color?" Loki exclaimed, taking the stone from Finn's hand. The magic stones hidden within monsters typically came in various shapes and sizes, but they all shared one common trait, a dark purple hue. However, the stone in Loki's hand defied convention. It boasted a brilliantly colored core encased within a bright yellow layer, with an exceptionally unusual shiny covering. Examining the stone closely, Loki held it up to the light, squinting as it reflected the illumination like a glinting jewel, casting an ethereal radiance upon her features. Finn's voice carried the weight of authority as he continued addressing the gathered executives. As a Familia, we must learn from this experience and adapt our strategies accordingly, he emphasized firmly, his tone resolute. Underestimating the dangers posed by this new species is a luxury we cannot afford, nor can we allow ourselves to be ill-prepared for future expeditions. The executives, each having confronted the monsters firsthand, exchanged knowing glances, their expressions mirroring the challenges they had faced during the expedition. Finn, after a moment of solemn reflection, proceeded to shuffle through various papers on his desk, delving into the details of the Familia's income from monster drops and the expenses incurred during the expedition. This included the costs of potions, equipments, and weapons destroyed in battle. As he discussed the figures, the looming debt of around 500 million Valis drew startled reactions from the executives. Even Loki's perpetually squinting eyes widened in shock at the staggering amount. She interjected with a mixture of concern and disbelief. 500 million Valis? Are you sure about this, Finn? Finn nodded gravely. Unfortunately, yes, we're deeply in the red after the losses from the expedition, and I haven't even taken into account the cost of our family members' personal weapons and equipment that were damaged or destroyed during this expedition. If I did, then the losses would easily exceed 1 billion Valis. His gaze traversed the room, meeting the eyes of each executive, ensuring they understood the full extent of the situation. The executives exchanged worried glances, realizing the gravity of their financial predicament. "What do we do now?" Gareth asked, voicing the collective apprehension in the room. Finn sighed, his expression reflecting the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "We'll need to strategize carefully and find ways to recoup our losses. But for now, let's focus on stabilizing our finances," he asserted, his voice tinged with resolve. "Furthermore, it's imperative that each of you get weapons with Durandal properties. It's become abundantly clear that it is the only effective counter against the monsters, acidic blood, Unfortunately, Finn continued, his tone unwavering, each of you will need to bear the cost of these weapons personally. With the Familia already deep in debt, we simply can't afford to cover these expenses. A wave of dismay swept through the executives, audible grumbles expressing their apprehension at the daunting costs ahead. They continued their discussion, brainstorming ideas for scheduling dungeon dives and accepting various quests to address the Familia's financial challenges. Tion suddenly exclaimed, "Are we going to ignore the fact that a level 1 defeated my sister today?" Tiona sighed audibly at her sister's antics. Riveria cast a reproachful glance at Tion. "We already discussed this matter earlier, immediately after the duel." Loki nodded in agreement. "Yes, we did. However, I believe it warrants an official discussion." Finn nodded in agreement. "Yes, I agree. Peter did issue the challenge in a public place. Even though the duel took place in our compound, sooner or later the news is bound to get out that a level 1 managed to defeat one of our top executives. This will harm our Familia's reputation." Gareth suggested, "How about we take an official stance that Tiona likes Peter and intentionally let him win? It would be in line with her pursuing him openly while still honoring the Amazon tradition." Tiona's reaction was swift and indignant. "Hey," she protested, her tone laced with irritation at Gareth's suggestion. Tion chimed in, accusingly, "But you did let him win, didn't you? You were holding back, and are we supposed to believe you couldn't break out of his weird web magic?" Tiona bristled at the insinuation, her pride as an Amazon warrior wounded. "Are you questioning my integrity as an Amazon warrior?" she retorted. "While I may have pulled my punches to prevent serious harm, I'd never willingly throw a fight. My warrior's honor won't allow it." Bed interjected with a skeptical tone, "What kind of level 1 spell can capture a level 5 adventurer?" The room fell into a contemplative silence as everyone mulled over the implications. Finn then spoke up, his voice carrying a weight of authority. "Regardless, Gareth does have a point. It would be prudent to maintain the official stance that Tiona intentionally allowed Peter to win." He silenced Tiona with a stern glance as she began to object. "Tiona, remember that as one of the top executives of the Loki Familia, upholding the Familia's honor is part of your duty. I'm not asking you to publicly admit to throwing the fight, but simply refrain from confirming or denying if you're confronted. If any god does happen to inquire, you can tell them the truth, that you were holding back." Tion chimed in with agreement, "Indeed, the captain's wisdom is undeniable, Tiona. You should heed his advice." Tiona merely huffed in response, clearly not in the mood to acknowledge Finn's instructions at the moment. Riveria spoke up, her voice calm and measured. "To address Bet's question, there are indeed a few level 1 spells that theoretically could restrain a level 5 adventurer. However, these spells typically require a lengthy incantation process, and even then, their effectiveness against someone as formidable as Tiona is questionable. The power disparity between a level 1 and a level 5 is simply too much." Gareth chimed in with a skeptical tone, "Did that kid look like a level 1 to any of you? His movements were more akin to those of a level 4, if not higher." Tion pondered aloud, could he have falsified his level when registering with the guild? Finn interjected with a thoughtful expression, "It's highly improbable that he could have attained such a high level outside of Orario." Ice interjected with her usual detached tone, her expression devoid of emotion. "He displayed unusual abilities similar to those of a spider, such as sticking to the wall, even hanging upside down from a pole with only his feet touching it and the use of web-like magic. The emblems on both front and back sides his armor depicted a spider and may suggest a connection between his abilities and spiders." Loki and the executives exchanged glances. Despite Ice's social awkwardness, her keen insight into combat dynamics was of form. Bed interjected, "And let's not overlook, Tomato Boys claim that this Peter fellow was blessed by a spirit." Tiona mused, "But isn't that just a legend? It's been centuries since anyone has allegedly received a spirit's blessing." Loki and her top 3 executives shared knowing glances. Unbeknownst to the junior executives, there was a child of a spirit among them in the very room. Loki said with a mischievous grin, "This Peter is becoming quite the curiosity. Perhaps I should simply challenge, lowly big boobs, to a war game and snatch him away forcibly." Tiona objected, her tone protective, "Hey, that's my boyfriend you're talking about." Tion elbowed her sister, "Wouldn't it be more convenient for you if he were in the same familia as you?" Finn interjected firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We have spent decades meticulously building up the reputation of our familia as heroes of Orario. We will not tarnish that legacy by engaging in a war game against one of the smallest and weakest familia." His words hung heavily in the air, emphasizing the gravity of his convictions. It was widely known among the executives that Finn harbored grand ambitions of becoming the shining beacon of the Palom throughout his illustrious career as an adventurer. He was deeply invested in upholding both his own and his familia's renown and reputation. Turning to the matter at hand, Finn proposed a strategic approach. Peter's infatuation with Tiona could work to our advantage. Once the mandatory one-year period within his familia is concluded, we can officially extend an invitation for him to transfer to our familia. We might even persuade him to pay the compensation to his goddess for leaving her familia. Tione quipped with a smirk, "Captain, you are counting on my sister to seduce him to join our familia. Believe me, she doesn't have the assets necessary for the job." Tiona shot back, "Oh please, don't you recall? Peter himself said I was the prettier one, despite you flaunting your assets." Before the sisters could engage in banter, Loki interjected with a mischievous glint in her eye, "Hey Tiona, why not ask your boyfriend about everything? His homeland, his powers, that spirit tomato boy said has blessed him. I'd love to hear all about it." Tiona paused, suspicion evident in her expression. "Wait, are you asking me to spy on my boyfriend?" Loki waved her hand dismissively. "Spying? Peef. No, isn't it natural for a girlfriend to take an interest in her boyfriend's life? And later, you can brag about him to your loved ones. It's not spying if it's expected." Tiona remained unconvinced, crossing her arms skeptically. "It's still spying." Loki leaned in, her eyes twinkling mischievously. "It's best that we find out more about Peter, because the more we know, the better we could tempt him to join our familia in the future. And, isn't it better if he were here, with you? Every day, in every mission, taking care of each other, always together." She leaned back, puckering her lips as if kissing the air, her theatrics drawing a chuckle from the others in the room. Tiona sighed softly, her head nodding in agreement with Loki's sentiment. Finn chimed in, his voice calm and reassuring. "Well, we mustn't rush things. Peter needs to complete the mandatory one-year period with his current familia," Finn emphasized. "Prying too hard could backfire, and we don't want Peter to become suspicious or feel pressured. Just act naturally around him." Tiona nodded in understanding. She was well aware of the rule imposed by the gods, designed to prevent exploitation and ensure loyalty. This rule mandated that adventurers stay with their familia for a minimum of 1 year before considering transfers, except under special circumstances such as a god's return to Tenkai or a wargame. Loki, ever the mischievous one, chimed in with her own suggestion. "Exactly, instead of prying, why not start with something simple, like those hero stories of Thor he mentioned from his homeland? You love hero stories, Tiona. It's a great way to bond and share interests." Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she glanced at Finn, who shot her a reproachful look. Finn intervened with a composed demeanor, his tone measured and reassuring. "Tiona, there's no need to rush. Just be yourself and enjoy the experience. Peter will open up to you when he's ready and trusts you." He then continued, "But do keep us informed about what you discover regarding his abilities and background. We're simply gathering information about a potential recruit, for his own benefit. Joining the best familia in Orario will help him reach his full potential, and it would mean you could always be together." Finn smoothly carried on with the meeting, seamlessly transitioning to address other matters on the agenda. Meanwhile, Tiona couldn't shake off her discomfort at the thought of spying on her first boyfriend. Chapter 14 First Spark. Hestia walked down the street with a spring in her step, practically skipping and humming with excitement. Her wonderful children had just handed her 81,000 valis. Initially, she thought they were giving her their entire earnings, but it turned out to be just a third, the familia's share only. Worried about how they had earned so much in a single day, Hestia expressed her concern, only for Peter to boast jokingly, "What else can you expect from someone who can defeat a level 5? Peter and Belle followed behind her, amused by her antics. Hestia practically skipped into a clothing shop, her eyes alight with excitement as she approached a mannequin draped in a dazzling silver dress. It sparkled as if adorned with diamonds, captivating both Belle and Peter's attention immediately. With a gasp of awe, Belle checked the price tag, only to be met with astonishment at the whopping 50,000 valis displayed there. Hestia confessed, "I fell in love with this dress while window shopping, but I didn't actually think I could afford it. Thanks to both of you, I can now buy it." She bought the dress and had her measurements taken, arranging for delivery of the adjusted dress the next day. Meanwhile, Peter scoured the shop for an outfit for his date with Tiona. Amidst the shimmering array of clothing which this shop seemed to specialize in, he stumbled upon a golden coat adorned with intricate designs, reminiscent of an Indian sherwani. It was a departure from his usual style back in his old world, but amidst the diverse range of clothing styles in Orario, it seemed fitting. Satisfied with his choice, he made the purchase. Peter then led them to a jewelry shop recommended by the salesman. As they perused the jewelry selection to complement Hestia's new dress, she hesitated, casting glances at the prices. Peter was reminded of his aunt in that moment, recalling how she had sacrificed so much for him as a single parent. Despite her own desires for nice dresses and jewelry, she had never been able to afford them. Peter vividly remembered how his aunt would always gaze longingly at the dresses and jewelry displayed in the shop windows as they walked past. This goddess, just like his aunt, had taken him in when he had nowhere else to go. Gently, Peter reminded Hestia of the importance of representing the familia. Remember, Hestia, your attire reflects the prosperity and image of our familia. Don't worry about the price. You have got to look your best. Belle said jokingly, you better obey our familia captain. Hestia, puzzled, inquired, Captain. Belle clarified, the guild asked us to designate a familia captain now that we have multiple members. Ultimately, it's your decision, but considering Peter's strength, experience, and skills, he's the obvious choice. Hestia exchanged glances between Peter and Belle, pondering his words. While Belle held a special place as her first familia member, she couldn't deny Peter's natural leadership qualities. He often took charge effortlessly, and she even found herself instinctively following his lead. His maturity, combined with his remarkable strength and skills, made him a clear candidate for the role. Hestia nodded in agreement. I agree, Peter should be the captain. Belle smiled, masking his feelings of inferiority. Congratulations, Captain. Meanwhile, Peter reciprocated the smile and shook Belle's hand, while Hestia embraced him, planting a congratulatory kiss on his cheek. The decision settled, they continued browsing the jewelry. After some consideration, they settled on a jewelry set priced at around 35,000 valis. Belle chimed in, I hardly killed any monsters today. I don't deserve an equal share. Let me contribute more to the Familia Fund, he suggested. Peter swiftly dismissed the notion, asserting, everyone in our team gets an equal share. He gestured to the 7,000 valis remaining in the Familia Fund from yesterday's earnings as reassurance. Despite Hestia's lingering hesitance, they proceeded with the purchase. Hestia finished updating Peter's status. He had insisted that she update his status first as he needed to get ready for his date. With a slight smile, she handed him the sheet. Peter Parker, LV, 1, Strength, I3, I11, Endurance, I0, I2, Dexterity, I4, I11, Agility, I6, I14, Mind, I22, I40, Magic, Arachnostrand, No Chant Magic, Shoot Webs from Hands, Closing Square Bracket, Skills, Spider Powers, Abilities akin to a spider's natural capabilities. Spider Sense, can sense danger. You've made quite the improvement since yesterday, Hestia remarked. Peter barely spared a glance at his sheet before passing it to Belle, who examined it with curiosity before heading to the bathroom for a shower. Hestia couldn't help but observe, he seems rather eager for his date, doesn't he? Yeah, Belle responded, a tinge of jealousy evident in his tone as he imagined having a date with Ice. He removed his shirt and stretched out on the bed, exposing his back for Hestia to update his status. Hestia's surprise was evident as she updated Belle's status. Curious, Belle grabbed the sheet as he rose from the bed. Belle Crenell, LV, 1, Strength, H140, G248, Endurance, H121, G232, Dexterity, H152, G257, Agility, G250, F368, Mind, I0, Magic, opening square bracket closing square bracket, Skills, opening square bracket closing square bracket. His eyebrows shot up in surprise as he scanned the numbers. More than 400 points. That was over 10 times the stats Peter had gained, and Belle had hardly even taken down a tenth of the monsters Peter had faced. How am I getting such a significant increase in stats, goddess? Belle inquired with genuine curiosity. However, Hestia's response surprised him. She replied with a hint of annoyance, "How should I know?" Belle couldn't fathom why she was suddenly upset. Meanwhile, Hestia silently cursed Ice was her name. It was clear that Belle's rapid increase in strength was directly linked to his infatuation with her. Peter stepped out of the bathroom, the golden sherwani adorning him like a garment fit for royalty. Hestia and Belle couldn't hide their awe at his appearance. "You look like a prince," Hestia remarked, a playful edge to her tone. "Other goddesses will try to snatch you away if they catch a glimpse of you like this. They're all a bunch of perverts." Peter blushed at the compliment, feeling a mixture of pride and embarrassment at the attention. Then, adopting a more serious tone, she cautioned, "Remember, don't spill any of your secrets to Tiona. Loki would pry them out of her," she said with a pointed look. With a hint of amusement, she added, "And take a taxi. You shouldn't walk to your date." "A taxi?" Peter echoed incredulously. He supposed he shouldn't be too surprised. After all, the technology and terminology in this world were already a mishmash of the unexpected. Hestia, assuming he didn't know what she meant, explained patiently, "Oh, you don't know what a taxi is? They're horse-drawn carriages you can rent in Orario. You just need to whistle really hard when you see one, and they'll stop for you." Peter shook his head, a bemused expression on his face. How did a New Yorker end up in a medieval world, learning about taxis from a goddess? As Peter departed, Hestia turned to Belle with a determined gleam in her eyes. "I won't lose to Ice was her name," she vowed silently. Leaning forward, she fixed her gaze on Belle, her intent clear. "Let's go on a date too, Belle," she proposed, a mischievous spark in her eyes. Belle's eyes widened in surprise. "Wait, you want to go on a date with me?" he asked incredulously. "Of course I do. Why else would I ask you?" Hestia replied with a playful grin. "Let's go." Belle hesitated briefly, his cheeks flushing crimson, before finding his voice. Well, Peter took quite some time preparing for his date. He consulted me for restaurant recommendations and bought a new dress. I feel like I should make some preparations too," he explained, his tone uncertain. He couldn't shake the feeling of unworthiness. Why would a goddess want to go on a date with someone like him? Could a goddess even have a relationship with a mortal? Hestia nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right, a date should be special. We'll make proper preparations." Tiona sighed dramatically as she found herself held hostage in front of the mirror. It seemed like the entire female contingent of the Familia had invaded her room to help her get ready for the date. Anakiti was treating her face like a canvas, using brushes in an arsenal of makeup products that could rival a master alchemist's collection. Seriously, why were there so many different kinds of brushes? Tiona felt like she was being assaulted by an army of fluffy bristles. Every girl in the room vying for a chance to wield a makeup brush. Even Rokta Hayes, the usually reserved Hume bunny, had thrown herself into the fray, lunging for the brush that Anakiti wielded like a weapon. It was like watching a tiny rabbit challenge a fierce lioness, except in this case, the lioness happened to be a level 4 cat girl with a penchant for hissing warnings. Tiona couldn't help but marvel at Rokta's newfound boldness. Had she been taking secret courage lessons from the dungeon monsters or something? And the advice, it was coming at her from all directions like a barrage of arrows in battle. Elfie, who had as much dating experience as a hermit crab, kept shouting instructions from the sidelines. It was like being in the middle of a chaotic battlefield strategy session, except instead of battling monsters, Tiona was battling her own reflection. She couldn't help but wonder why everyone was making such a big deal out of this. It was just a date, not a royal wedding. Then again, with Loki's possessive tendencies, she hardly allowed the girls to date within the Familia, let alone outside it. Dating someone from outside the Familia was like breaking through the Great Wall surrounding Orario. Maybe they were secretly hoping Tiona's date would set a new trend, like a rebellion against the tyranny of Loki's restrictions. Tiona sighed, pondering why everything had to be so complicated. Peter was her first boyfriend. Why did the Familia have to meddle in her personal love life? While the girls cheered her on, hoping for some trashy romance novel fantasy to unfold before their eyes, her goddess and the top executives expected her to spy on her boyfriend. This was her first date ever. Why was it so difficult to date her? Her reputation as the Crusher certainly hadn't helped. And being an Amazon hadn't made it any easier, especially with that ridiculous tradition of only courting men stronger than oneself. She could count the men stronger than her on one hand, and most of them were in the Freya Familia, drooling over that seductive goddess of theirs. Okay, yes, it hadn't been the first time she'd been asked out. But the ones who had were drunk perverts who had thought she was a prostitute from the Ishtar familia. They had quickly scampered away, tails between their legs, some of them literally, when they realized who she really was. The two primary goddesses of the Amazons hadn't exactly smoothed the path for their love lives. Goddess Kali had painted them as barbaric savages, and under her rule, the only men permitted in Telskayra had been relegated to being sex slaves. Tiona mentally shuddered at the dark memories of Telskayra, quickly pushing them aside. Today was a happy occasion, and she refused to let the shadows of her past darken it. Top of form, Goddess Ishtar had further sullied the Amazons' reputation, branding them as whores. The Amazons' fashion sense did not help regarding that matter. Sometimes, Tiona found herself wishing she could wear clothes that covered her up a bit more. Of course, this wish had absolutely nothing to do with her small boobs. Nope, not even a tiny bit. Tiona was frankly tired of being an Amazon. If she weren't one, perhaps she would have had a happy childhood. Before being an Amazon, she was a woman. She wanted to know that she's attractive to someone. Well, at least someone she liked. She knew that being a high-class adventurer had its privileges, and she loved adventuring. But it sucked for dating. Especially for an Amazon. She had hoped that a man would make the effort to invite her to dinner, or gift her flowers, or even a new hero book. As a beautiful woman, she felt she deserved at least that. Or was she not beautiful? She had begun to doubt it. But then along came Peter, boldly proclaiming her beauty surpassing even Tione's. Despite her assets, take that Tione. In what felt like a scene ripped straight from a cliché romance novel, he had challenged her to a fight for the honor of winning her heart. She had expected him to lose, but she had resolved not to inflict too much harm upon him. She had planned to go out with him anyway, not on a date, but as friends. Even Lefia had conceded, it was so passionate, like something out of a romance novel. That human may be foolish, but he's also remarkably brave. It's a shame you're going to crush him. Yet, against all expectations, he emerged victorious. Even the captain acknowledged it, he won fair and square, albeit in a weird, webby, way. In the kiss that followed, utterly romantic, by any measure, he had completely won her heart. Tiona's train of thought was interrupted as Lefia brought over some of her jewelry to lend for the date. The attention from all these girls was both irritating and endearing. She looked at her reflection. Anakiti had done a pretty good job at doing her makeup. Glancing around the room, Tiona noticed that Tione was conspicuously absent from the female contingent surrounding her. A mischievous smirk tugged at her lips. Tione must be seething with jealousy. The room buzzed with unsolicited advice, each girl suddenly transforming into a self-proclaimed dating guru despite their complete lack of experience. Tiona couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Here she was, about to embark on her first date, receiving tips from a squad of relationship rookies. As she tried on Lefia's jewelry, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. The absurdity of the situation was almost too much, an Amazon warrior, a feared adventurer, being fussed over like a bride by a gaggle of well-meaning but clueless friends. Peter successfully hailed a taxi. To Twilight Manor, please, he requested as he settled into the carriage. The driver nodded and flicked the reins, setting the cart in motion. The sound of wooden wheels clattering against the rocky pavement reverberated in Peter's ears, and he couldn't help but find the ride rather uncomfortable. With each jolt and shake, he pondered the possibility of inventing rubber tires to smoothen the journey. As he contemplated this, another thought crossed his mind. Did the concept of patents exist in this world? He leaned forward and asked the driver, "Can you suggest any good places for a date?" The driver, without missing a beat, offered a range of options, from lively casinos to elegant theaters showcasing plays or musical performances. None of the options particularly appealed to Peter. He wasn't keen on gambling for a date, and musicals didn't pique his interest either. Perhaps someday he would check out a play, considering this world lacked movies. Peter inquired about Dragon's Den, a pub recommended by Belle. The driver responded, "It's a fine establishment, sir, but it's often frequented by adventurers. Not the most ideal spot for a date, if you ask me. I'd suggest Fortuna's Gourmet instead." Peter chuckled, "My girlfriend is an Amazon warrior. I doubt she'd fancy a place too upscale." The driver's eyes widened in recognition. "Ah, so you're the famous level 1 adventurer who defeated Loki Familia's crusher." Surprised, Peter asked, How did you know? The driver grinned. Word travels fast in Orario, especially when it comes to juicy gossip. Peter couldn't help but wonder how news spread so rapidly since morning. It wasn't like Orario had social media. The driver then suggested, I would recommend Heroes Heaven, sir. It caters to adventurers and also is a bit classy. I think it would be a perfect place for your date. Peter nodded. I'll follow your recommendation. What's your name, by the way? The driver replied with a friendly smile, It's John, sir. As the carriage rolled along the cobblestone streets, Peter continued his small talk with John. They exchanged thoughts on the vibrant cityscape passing by, discussing notable landmarks and places of interest that Orario had to offer. From bustling marketplaces to serene parks, John shared insights into the myriad attractions scattered throughout the city. They soon arrived at Twilight Manor, its grand silhouette looming against the evening sky. At the gate, the guards halted them with a stern inquiry, State your business. However, as Peter stepped out of the carriage, he noticed a glimmer of recognition in the male guard's eyes. Oh, it's you, the guard exclaimed before turning towards his companion. Wait here, I'll call Tiona. Meanwhile, the female guard's gaze lingered on Peter, her cheeks tinted with a delicate blush as she quickly averted her eyes when he glanced in her direction. Peter, feeling a tad self-conscious in his extravagant attire, couldn't help but chuckle inwardly at the unexpected attention. Peter drew in his breath as he caught sight of Tiona's arrival. She moved with a confident stride, her bare feet making soft impressions on the cobblestones. In the dim light of the night, she seemed to radiate an inner glow, her skin aglow with a soft luminescence that drew the eye. Her attire, though revealing in the typical fashion of Amazonian dress, accentuated the lithe curves of her form, adorned with subtle makeup and delicate jewelry. As Peter observed the unfolding spectacle, his attention was drawn to the windows overlooking the main gate, where several female members of the familia had gathered, their eyes filled with curiosity. Among them, a mischievous cat girl couldn't resist adding to the excitement with playful cat calls, much to Tiona's embarrassment. From a second-floor window, Loki watched with an amused expression, clearly entertained by the scene below. Finally, as Tiona emerged from the gate, a faint blush adorned her cheeks, enhancing her charm as Peter gallantly took her hand and planted a kiss on it. The cat girl's calls grew louder, injecting the moment with a playful energy that only added to the whimsical atmosphere. As Peter swung open the carriage door for Tiona, she wasted no time scrambling inside, eager to evade the embarrassing attention of her familia. Following her lead, Peter swiftly climbed into the carriage, catching snippets of whispered admiration from the assembled girls. The term, Prince Charming, floated to his ears, eliciting a grin as he settled in beside Tiona. As the carriage started moving, Peter turned to Tiona and said, You look absolutely amazing tonight. Tiona blushed slightly and replied, And you're looking good too, Prince Charming, she giggled. You heard that? Peter asked, surprised. She pointed to her ears and said, Level 5 hearing here. I don't miss much. Peter didn't know that leveling up improved senses too. Something to consider later. Tiona's fingers traced the intricate embroidery of his sparkly sherwani with childlike glee. Seriously, this is a really nice suit, she said, admiringly. Peter smiled, appreciating her enthusiasm. But then Tiona's expression turned thoughtful. So, why? She asked. Why what? Peter responded, curious. Why did you choose me? You could have any girl you wanted. Why did you choose someone like me? Peter pondered the question. You are a doppelganger of my ex-girlfriend from another dimension, would probably be the wrong thing to say. He met her gaze and replied with a warm smile, because when I look at you, I see someone who's strong, brave, and kind. You're not just beautiful, Tiona, you're extraordinary. And I'd be a fool to let a chance with you slip by. Tiona's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with emotion. You really mean that? She whispered. Every word, Peter said, his voice sincere. So where are we going? Tiona asked, her curiosity evident. Peter replied with a smile, it's a surprise. Tiona's eyes sparkled with excitement. A surprise, huh, I can't wait to see what you have planned. Peter chuckled. You'll love it, I promise. The carriage continued its journey through the bustling streets of Orario, the anticipation in the air palpable. Peter glanced at Tiona, her excitement infectious, and couldn't help but feel a swell of happiness at the thought of making this night special for her. Peter and Tiona entered Heroes Heaven, an establishment that exuded sophistication, a step above the hostess of fertility in terms of refinement. Soft lighting bathed the polished interiors, creating an inviting atmosphere that beckoned them inside. A warm smile greeted them as a friendly waitress led them to a secluded corner table, where they settled in for the evening. As they took their seats, Peter and Tiona absorbed the ambiance of Heroes Heaven. The air buzzed with the gentle hum of conversation, complemented by the soothing melody of background music. Their eyes caught sight of a small stage where musicians played various instruments, adding to the enchanting atmosphere. Peter's gaze wandered, taking in the diverse crowd, a mix of adventurers swapping tales of daring exploits and couples engaged in quiet conversation over candlelit dinners. Another waitress approached, handing them their menus. Peter confidently ordered their best wine, but Tiona swiftly interjected. "Peter, do you even know what their best wine is?" Peter's confidence faltered as he perused the wine menu, his eyebrows shooting up in disbelief at the staggering price of a single bottle of Soma wine, 80,000 valis. Sensing his hesitation, he turned to Tiona, silently deferring to her judgment on the matter. With a nod of agreement, he let her take the lead in selecting their wine for the evening. As the waitress arrived with their chosen wine, they turned their attention to perusing the menu and placing their meal orders. As Peter and Tiona immersed themselves in their evening, savoring the wine and each other's company, a disruption shattered the tranquility of Heroes Heaven. The door swung open with a jarring creak, drawing the attention of every patron in the tavern. Into the establishment stepped a figure exuding an air of arrogance, accompanied by a retinue of followers who trailed behind him like obedient shadows. This newcomer, a cat person with small stature and piercing yellow eyes, commanded attention with every step, his presence unsettling the atmosphere of the tavern. Despite his diminutive size, there was an undeniable intensity about him, a sense of coiled aggression barely contained beneath the surface. His jet black hair framed his angular features, adding to his aura of danger. As he strode confidently across the room, the patrons of Heroes Heaven fell silent, their conversations tapering off into hushed whispers. Some cast furtive glances in his direction, while others averted their gaze altogether, as if afraid to meet his penetrating stare. The mood in the tavern shifted palpably, tension crackling in the air like electricity, as the newcomer took his seat at a nearby table, his smirk oozing with insolence as he fixed his gaze on Peter and Tiona. His companions, a motley crew of similarly intimidating individuals, positioned themselves around him with an air of deference, their presence only adding to the sense of unease that now permeated the tavern. Despite the bustling atmosphere of Heroes Heaven, there was an unmistakable sense of foreboding that hung over the establishment, as if the arrival of this enigmatic figure had cast a shadow over the proceedings. The cat man sneered at Tiona, his yellow eyes gleaming with malice. "So this is the famed level 5 crusher, the Amazon who lost to a level 1, he taunted, his voice dripping with scorn. The entire tavern grew even quieter, the tension palpable. Peter glanced at Tiona, noticing her clenched fists and the fury in her eyes. He then turned his glare toward the cat man, who met his gaze with a penetrating stare and a smirk that screamed arrogance. The newcomer's black hair and cat ears added to his menacing aura, his very presence exuding a violent energy that made the other patrons shift uncomfortably in their seats. Peter felt a surge of anger and protective instinct. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. The cat man's smirk widened, his eyes never leaving Peter's. "Just someone who doesn't think much of weaklings," he replied, his tone filled with disdain. His companions chuckled, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Peter's fists clenched under the table, but he kept his voice calm. "If you have a problem, take it somewhere else." The cat man laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Oh, I don't have a problem. I just enjoy watching someone who thinks they're strong squirm." His gaze shifted back to Tiona. "Isn't that right, Crusher?" Tiona's eyes flashed with anger, but she remained silent, her fury simmering just beneath the surface. Peter was about to rise from his seat when Tiona grabbed his arm, her grip firm and urgent. "Peter, don't," she whispered, her voice tense. "He's Alan Frommel, the vice captain of the Freya Familia. A level 6, he's the fastest adventurer in Orario." Peter paused, processing the weight of her words. The fastest adventurer in Orario? And this coming from Tiona, who could move so quickly she became a blur to him. The realization made him reconsider his next move, his anger tempered by a sense of caution. Alan's smirk grew even wider, clearly relishing the discomfort he was causing. "Why bother whispering? I can hear everything you're saying," he sneered at Tiona before turning his mocking gaze to Peter. "What's the matter? Afraid to stand up to someone stronger?" he taunted, his eyes glittering with amusement. Peter clenched his jaw, his hands balling into fists under the table. Alan's taunts bore down on him like a heavy weight, but more than that, his spider sense was tingling, a clear warning not to confront this adversary. It was a primal alarm, blaring danger with every pulse. This wasn't a mere playground bully, this was a predator, and Peter knew he was woefully outmatched. And this is the end of part 7 of this amazing crossover, What If? Do not forget to